Unexpected assignment, the Alliance vessel. Hyperion was a marvel of engineering, a gleaming testament to cooperation between 17 different species. Lieutenant Nikolai Frost had never expected to be assigned here. As a human soldier, his expertise was in ground combat and tactical operations, not diplomatic missions aboard the flagship of an interspecies alliance. The curved corridors of the Hyperion hummed with a gentle vibration that Nikolai found oddly soothing as he made his way to his first briefing. The walls were a pearlescent white material that seemed to absorb and reflect light in equal measure, creating an atmosphere of perpetual dawn. Aliens of various shapes and sizes moved with purpose through the halls, barely glancing at the human in their midst. Commander Valeron waited in the briefing room, his imposing figure standing motionless by the viewport. The Aldraxian was nearly 7 feet tall, his skin a deep blue-gray with subtle patterns that shifted like clouds across his face and exposed arms. 4 amber eyes tracked Nikolai as he entered, unblinking and evaluating. "Lieutenant Frost?" Valeron's voice resonated at a frequency that made Nikolai's chest vibrate slightly. "Your record is impressive. The Council believes your experience with asymmetrical warfare will be valuable to our security division." Nikolai stood at attention. "Thank you, Commander. I'm honored to serve." "Humans," Valeron said, mandibles clicking slightly in what Nikolai recognized as amusement. "Always so formal when nervous. Relax, Lieutenant. This is not a military vessel in the way you understand it. We are peacekeepers, diplomats, and when necessary, warriors." As Valeron briefed him on his duties, Nikolai noticed something in his peripheral vision, a figure watching from a recessed doorway. When he turned his head slightly, he caught glimpse of a female Aldraxian. Unlike Valeron's imposing stature, she was more slender, her skin a lighter shade of blue with swirling patterns that seemed to pulse with her breathing. Her eyes, a startling violet rather than amber, met his for just a moment before she disappeared. "That was my daughter Lyra," Valeron said without turning. "She has a talent for appearing where she shouldn't be. Pay her no mind." But Nikolai found it impossible to follow that order in the days that followed. Lyra appeared everywhere, in the mess hall examining human food with obvious curiosity, in the training facility watching the security teams practice, in the observatory, where Nikolai often went to find a moment of peace. It was there, on his 5th night aboard the Hyperion, that she finally spoke to him. "You fight differently than the others," she said, her voice melodic and softer than her father's rumbling tones. "Humans move like water. The others, they are stone or steel or fire. But you flow." Nikolai turned from the viewport where he'd been watching the stars. "Military training varies between species. We adapt to our physical limitations. Is that what you believe?" Lyra stepped closer, her movements graceful and deliberate. "That humans are limited, compared to an Aldraxian's strength or a Vestian's speed?" "Yes." Lyra's patterns shifted into what Nikolai now recognized as amusement. "And yet, it is humans who have been requested for this mission." "Curious." "What mission?" Nikolai asked, suddenly alert. "I was told this was a standard diplomatic rotation." "My father doesn't share everything with his crew," Lyra said, her violet eyes studying him. "There are rumors of dissension within the Alliance. Species who believe humans are advancing too quickly, gaining too much influence." Nikolai frowned. "Is that why I'm actually here? To assess a threat against Earth?" "Perhaps." Lyra moved closer, her scent reminiscent of ocean air and something spicy. "Or perhaps to be assessed yourself." Their conversations became a nightly occurrence after that. Nikolai found himself drawn to her intelligence, her different perspective on the Alliance politics, and her subtle humor. Despite Commander Valeron's obvious disapproval, displayed through increasingly difficult assignments and scrutiny, Nikolai couldn't stay away. 2 weeks into his assignment, Nikolai discovered a series of encrypted transmissions in the Hyperion's communication logs. They were cleverly hidden, disguised as routine maintenance data, but his specialized training in counterintelligence caught the pattern. Someone was communicating with an outside source, and they were discussing human vulnerabilities. When he brought this to Valeron, The commander's reaction was unexpected. "Ignore it, Lieutenant. This is beyond your assignment parameters." "Sir, with respect, if there's a security threat—" "There is no threat." Valoran's 4 eyes narrowed. "Focus on your duties and nothing more." That night, as Nikolai reviewed the logs again in his quarters, attempting to decode more of the transmissions, his door chimed. Lyra stood in the hallway, her patterns pulsing with agitation. "May I come in?" she asked, glancing down the corridor. "I need to speak with you." Privately, Nikolai stepped aside, allowing her to enter. The door slid shut behind her. "You found the transmissions," she said without preamble. "My father told me." "He ordered me to ignore them," Nikolai replied, studying her reaction carefully. "Because he believes ignoring problems makes them disappear." Lyra's patterns shifted into something Nikolai hadn't seen before. Concern, perhaps fear. But he's wrong. The collective is real, and they're planning something. The collective, a faction within the alliance that believes human expansion, should be checked. They see your kind as unpredictable, dangerous. Your ability to adapt and your technological progression rate frightens them. Nikolai leaned against his desk. "And what do you believe?" Lyra's violet eyes met his. "I believe danger comes from fear and ignorance. The collective fears what they don't understand. I've been studying humans for years. Your literature, your history, your art. You're not perfect, but you're not the threat they claim." "Why are you telling me this?" Nikolai asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "Because I intercepted a message today," Lyra said, her voice dropping. "The Hyperion is scheduled to visit Earth next month for a diplomatic summit. The collective plans to use that opportunity to demonstrate human vulnerability." Nikolai's blood ran cold. "An attack?" "A statement," Lyra corrected. "They want to prove humans aren't ready for full Alliance membership. They'll sabotage the visit. Somehow, I don't know the details yet, but I intend to find out." "Why not tell your father?" "Because I'm not certain he isn't involved," Lyra said, her patterns dimming slightly. "He's become increasingly secretive, increasingly concerned about human influence. The collective's arguments may have swayed him." Nikolai processed this information, weighing his duty to report this conversation against his growing trust in Lyra. "What do you suggest we do?" "We need to access the secure communications hub," Lyra said. "I can get us in, but I'll need your expertise to identify the relevant data." "That's a serious breach of protocol," Nikolai said, though he was already considering how they might accomplish it. "More serious than an attack on Earth?" Lyra stepped closer, her violet eyes intense. "I'm asking you to trust me, Nikolai, not as the commander's daughter, but as someone who believes in the true purpose of the Alliance." Nikolai realized in that moment that his feelings for Lyra had grown beyond professional interest or even friendship. There was something about her courage, her willingness to challenge her own father's authority for what she believed was right, that resonated with him. "System," Lyra said suddenly, her eyes never leaving his. "Locked door." The door sealed with a soft hiss, and the room's ambient lighting dimmed slightly. "Now," she said, "we can speak freely. Whatever happens next, whatever we discover, I need to know you're with me. Not for Earth, not for the Alliance, but because you believe it's right." Nikolai stood before her, acutely aware of the line they were about to cross. His duty as a soldier told him to report this conversation immediately. His instincts as a person told him to trust Lyra. "I'm with you," he said finally, reaching out to touch her arm. Her skin was cool and smooth beneath his fingers, the pattern swirling faster at his touch. Lyra's expression softened. "Then let's find the truth together." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Nikolai had thought he was just a soldier on assignment, but as Lyra's hand covered his, he realized everything had changed. His path forward was no longer clear, but it undeniably involved her. With the door locked and the stars bearing witness through the viewport, they began to plan their next move against an enemy that might include the very commander of the ship they served. Beyond duty, the security hub's access panel glowed a soft blue as Lyra pressed her palm against it. Nikolai stood watch, his pulse quickening with each passing second. They had precisely 8 minutes before the next security patrol would pass this section. "Are you sure this won't trigger an alert?" Nikolai whispered, glancing down the dimly lit corridor. "My clearance is legitimate," Lyra replied, her voice equally hushed. "As the commander's daughter and cultural liaison, I have access to most areas. It's what we do inside that would raise concerns." The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a compact room filled with holographic displays and monitoring equipment. Nikolai followed Lyra inside, immediately taking in the layout. 3 exits, minimal surveillance, and a central terminal that would serve their purpose. "We have 6 minutes, Lyra said, moving to the terminal. "The system requires dual authentication. For message archives, I'll need your help." Nikolai nodded, positioning himself at a secondary console. Together they navigated through the Hyperion's communication protocols, Lyra's knowledge of the system complementing Nikolai's training in counterintelligence. "There," Nikolai said, pointing to a stream of data. "That encryption pattern matches what I found earlier, but it's more extensive than I thought." Lyra's pattern swirled with concentration as she worked. "I can't decrypt it all now, but I can copy it to an isolated device. We'll need time to analyze it properly." As they worked, Nikolai couldn't help but notice how naturally they fell into sync. Her movements anticipating his decisions complementing hers. They had known each other for mere weeks, yet there was an understanding between them that transcended their brief acquaintance. "Done," Lyra said, pocketing a small data crystal. "Let's go." They slipped out of the security hub moments before the patrol arrived, taking separate paths back to their quarters to avoid suspicion. Nikolai's mind raced with possibilities. What would they find in the encrypted messages? How deep did this conspiracy go? And most troublingly, what would they do if Commander Valoran was indeed involved? 3 hours later, Lyra arrived at his quarters, her patterns pulsing with agitation. "I've decrypted enough to confirm my suspicions," she said as soon as the door closed behind her. "The collective is planning something during the Earth Summit. They call it Operation Humility, a demonstration of human vulnerability." Nikolai frowned. "What kind of demonstration?" "The details are obscured, but I found references to the Earth Defense Grid and something called Achilles Protocol." "Does that mean anything to you?" Nikolai's blood ran cold. Achilles Protocol is a theoretical weakness in Earth's planetary shield system. If exploited, it could leave Earth defenseless for 17 minutes, long enough for a targeted strike. "That's what they're planning," Lyra said, her violet eyes intense. "Not a full-scale attack, but a precision strike against a symbolic target. Enough to embarrass Earth and prove humans aren't ready for full Alliance membership." Nikolai paced. The small room, his military training kicking in. "We need to alert Earth Command and find out who's involved." "There's more," Lyra said, her voice dropping. "I found my father's authorization code in the communications." Nikolai stopped pacing. "That doesn't necessarily mean he's involved. His code could have been used without his knowledge. Or he could be leading the collective," Lyra countered, her patterns dimming with sadness. "My father has always been traditional. He believes in hierarchy, in measured progress. Humans advance too quickly for his comfort." The moment hung between them, heavy with implication. Nikolai approached Lyra slowly, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Whatever we discover," he said softly, "we'll face it together. Your father may have his reasons, but that doesn't justify endangering innocent lives." Lyra's patterns shifted, her eyes meeting his with a vulnerability that made his heart ache. "I've spent my life trying to understand other species, to bridge the gaps between us. I never thought I'd have to choose between my father and what's right." "You're not choosing against your father," Nikolai said. "You're choosing for the true spirit of the Alliance." Their faces were inches apart now, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. Nikolai wasn't sure who moved first, but suddenly, Lyra was in his arms, her cool lips pressed against his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a passion that surprised them both. Her patterns swirled brilliantly across her skin, luminescent in the dim light of his quarters. When they finally broke apart, Lyra's eyes were wide with wonder. I didn't know humans could feel so warm. Nikolai smiled, brushing his thumb across her cheek. There's a lot about humans you might enjoy discovering. The moment of connection was shattered by a sudden alert klaxon. The Hyperion's internal communication system activated. All security personnel to stations, unidentified vessel approaching. This is not a drill. Nikolai and Lyra exchanged a glance. The timing is suspicious, he said, already moving to retrieve his uniform jacket. We need to get to the bridge, Lyra agreed. If this is related to the collective's plan, we need to see what happens. They moved through the corridors, now bustling, with activity as crew members rushed to their stations. When they reached the bridge, Commander Valoran stood at the central command platform, his massive form silhouetted against the main view screen. Lieutenant Frost, Valoran's voice cut through the controlled chaos. Explain why you are on my bridge during a security alert. I was escorting your daughter to safety, sir, Nikolai replied smoothly. Given the circumstances, I thought it prudent. Valoran's 4 eyes narrowed, but he nodded curtly. Very well. Since you're here, man, the tactical station, we may need your expertise. On the main view screen, a vessel approached, sleek, dark, and unfamiliar in design. It broadcasted no identification signal, maintaining a deliberate course toward the Hyperion. Communications hail them again. Valoran ordered, his posture rigid with tension. No response, Commander, replied the communications officer, a slender Vestian whose fingers moved with blurring speed across the console. Nikolai studied the tactical display, noting the vessel's approach vector and energy signature. Sir, their weapon systems are active but not targeting us. They're positioning for a jump to hyperspace. Destination? Valoran demanded. Nikolai's eyes met Lyra's across the bridge. Based on their trajectory, Earth. The bridge fell silent. Valoran's patterns shifted into something unreadable as he turned to face Nikolai. You seem unsurprised, Lieutenant, he said, his voice dangerously calm. Permission to speak freely, Commander. Granted. We know about the collective, Nikolai said, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his stomach. We know about Operation Humility and the planned demonstration during the Earth Summit. Valoran's patterns darkened. We? Lyra stepped forward. Father, we know your authorization code was used to communicate with the collective. If you're involved in this plan, it's not too late to stop it. The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the commander's daughter confronted him. Valoran's expression remained impassive, but his pattern swirled with complex emotions. What I do, he said finally. I do for the stability of the Alliance. Humans advance too quickly, integrate too eagerly. The balance of power must be maintained. By attacking Earth? Nikolai challenged. By undermining the very principles the Alliance was founded upon? Not attacking, Valoran corrected. Demonstrating. A controlled exhibition of vulnerability to temper human ambition. Father, Lyra said, her voice breaking. This isn't maintaining balance, it's creating division. The Alliance was formed to celebrate our differences, not fear them. Before Valoran could respond, the tactical console blared a warning. The unidentified vessel had accelerated suddenly, activating its jump drive. They're making the jump to Earth, Nikolai reported, his fingers flying across the console. We can intercept if we act now. Valoran hesitated, his 4 eyes darting between Nikolai and Lyra. Commander, Nikolai pressed, regardless of your beliefs about human advancement, this action violates Alliance protocol. No member world should be targeted without full Council approval. A tense silence filled the bridge. Then Valoran straightened to his full height. Tactical. Lock onto that vessel. Prepare to disable their jump capabilities. Relief flooded through Nikolai as he complied, but the moment was short-lived. The unidentified vessel detected their targeting systems and suddenly changed course, directly toward the Hyperion. Impact in 15 seconds, called out the tactical officer. Evasive maneuvers, Valoran ordered. All hands, brace for impact. Nikolai lunged across the bridge, reaching Lyra just as the first impact struck. The deck beneath them lurched, throwing them against the bulkhead. He covered her body with his own as a second explosion rocked the ship, the lights flickering and alarms blaring. "Shields at 60%, reported the tactical officer. "They're targeting our propulsion systems." Through the smoke and chaos, Nikolai saw Valeron activate the ship-wide communication system. "This is Commander Valeron. To all collective sympathizers aboard the Hyperion, stand down. The demonstration against Earth is cancelled. This is a direct order." Nikolai helped Lyra to her feet, his arm still protectively around her waist. "Your father just chose his side," he said quietly. Lyra's patterns brightened slightly. "He chose the Alliance. As it should be." The attacking vessel made another pass, but this time, the Hyperion was ready. Coordinated fire from the defense batteries caught the smaller ship, disabling its weapon systems. Within minutes, the threat was neutralized, the vessel disabled and drifting. "Prepare a boarding party," Valeron ordered. "I want prisoners, not martyrs." As the bridge crew worked to stabilize the Hyperion systems, Valeron approached Nikolai and Lyra. "Lieutenant Frost," he said formally, "your actions today, while technically insubordinate, were in service to the greater good. The Alliance owes you a debt." Nikolai stood at attention. "Thank you, sir, but I believe your daughter deserves equal credit. Without her courage, we might not have uncovered the plot in time." Valeron's gaze shifted to Lyra, his pattern softening. "My daughter has always seen connections that others miss. It seems she was right about humans as well." Lyra stepped forward, her hand finding Nikolai's. "Father, I've requested a transfer to the Earth Diplomatic Corps. I want to help strengthen the Alliance from within, to build bridges instead of highlighting differences." Valeron's patterns flickered with surprise, then understanding as he noted the connection between his daughter and the human lieutenant. "And you, Lieutenant?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "What are your plans?" Nikolai straightened his shoulders. "I've been considering requesting an extension of my assignment aboard the Hyperion, sir. I believe there's much I could learn about Alliance security protocols. And much you could teach," Valeron acknowledged. "Very well. I'll approve both requests, conditionally." "Conditionally?" Lyra asked. "Yes," Valeron's patterns shifted into what Nikolai now recognized as resigned amusement. "On the condition that whatever is developing between you two remains professional while on duty." Nikolai felt heat rising to his face but maintained his composure. "Of course, Commander." "Good," Valeron said, turning back toward the command center. "Now we have a ship to repair and conspirators to identify. The collective's reach may be greater than we realized." As Valeron moved away, Lyra turned to Nikolai, her violet eyes filled with promise. "I thought I was just a soldier," Nikolai said softly, until the commander's daughter closed the door. Lyra's patterns brightened. "And now?" "Now," Nikolai said, taking her hand. "I think I'm something more. We both are." As the Hyperion system stabilized and the crew worked to assess the damage, Nikolai and Lyra stood together at the viewport, watching as the stars beyond seemed to shine a little brighter. The path ahead would not be easy. There were still collective sympathizers to identify, bridges to rebuild between species, and personal boundaries to navigate. But they would face it together, a human and an Aldraxian united by something stronger than duty. The Alliance would endure not despite their differences but because of them. And perhaps, Nikolai thought as Lyra's patterns swirled contentedly beside him, that was the most important lesson of all.